So a warm good afternoon to all the teams who are competing for the semi-finals of the Frankenstein debate competition. Frankenstein obviously means the monsters that we are defeating as we try to run for sustainability for the planet. And Anjana ma'am, it's my pleasure to now introduce the teams who have come onto the arena, which is team number 2 and team number 4. Before we begin, teams, I do want to make sure that you know who you are being adjudicated by, though I know you've got a flavor of it, but Anjana ma'am is pursuing political science, which is a very important subject in the Delhi University, most competitive, fierce university that I know in this country for sure. She started debating in grade 9. So she started much later than you are starting because you are all in the range of 8 to 10. And she's still passionate about it. And hence that's why helps her become the president of her debating society, which is called Crossfire. I do want to state that Anjana ma'am has come in specially because she was one of the best judges in a lot of judging competitions. So we want to make sure that you have the best judge available. She has won best judges across many competitions like Axiom, Speak Up, Malakna, DNLU, and many more. Apart from that, she's a regular adjudicator at the nationals across, and obviously she regularly adjudicates college level debaters, but she's taken out the time for us today. So Anjana ma'am, thank you so much for joining us today and taking out the time. Before we begin, I do want to make sure that all of you give me a big smile and we can then take a photograph before we start listening to the important topics that you're going to be discussing. Yes, all of you are ready for a quick snap? All right, so let me go 1, 2, and smile. All right, thank you so much. So with that, Anjana ma'am, if you're ready to go, then may I please begin the session now?
Yeah, we're all ready.
Lovely. So the motion that we are going to be debating on is this House believes that environmentalists should emphasize blaming large corporations for individual degradation as opposed to focusing on individual responsibility. Extremely important topic to discuss. And we will be starting with team 2. Varlika, if you're ready, then we are happy to hear you. We will be doing the timekeeping. And when we do the timekeeping, when the buzzer goes, you can complete the sentence that you are saying. But beyond the time that you've been given, the adjudicator will not be taking your points into consideration. Right? Malika, is it okay if I ask you to just put your face in the center a little? Just come a little closer to the camera and above so that you can see your face completely. Lovely. All of you just settle your faces in the center of the camera, please. Okay. Lovely, Varlika. We can go at the count of 3, 2, 1.
Yes. A very good afternoon, esteemed adjudicator and my fellow opponent. My name is Ibralika Khurana and I represent the government in front of this forum as the Prime Minister. Today's motion is that this House believes that environmentalists should emphasize blaming large corporations for environmental degradation as opposed to focusing on individual responsibility, and we strongly agree with the motion. Let me start by defining the motion. The keywords of the motion are environmentalists, a person who wants to protect themselves from protect the environment, and blaming, to think or say that a certain person or thing is responsible for something bad that has happened. Moving on to my arguments. A recent report found out that just 100 companies are responsible for 71% of global emissions since 1988. Incredibly, a mere 25 corporations and state-owned groups were responsible for more than half of global industrial emissions in that same period. Most of these are coal and oil producing companies and include ExxonMobil, Shell, BP, Chevron, Gazprom, and Aramco. So why do we blame individuals for global greenhouse gas emissions when just a small number of enterprises are responsible for such large portion of them? Large corporations and businesses must be held accountable for reducing industrial pollution. If these corporations contribute to the massive environmental degradation and pollution, why can't we delegate the responsibility to clean the mess that they have created on Earth? Secondly, although the demand from consumers partially plays a role in the production process of companies, it is the companies themselves that have presented consumers with the idea of the very product. Corporations create the product and the desire through elaborate marketing and then refuse to take responsibility for the problems that will result. Whether it's plastic, fashion, cars, or any other anti-green product we use, each one was created by a company whose goal is to make profit at any cost, mainly the environment and people. Blaming individual consumers is pointless. People may have created a demand for Coke, but they didn't ask for it in a plastic bottle that takes millions of years to degrade. And yet, it has become the responsibility of consumers to recycle these companies' products rather than attacking the first step of consumption, unsustainable manufacturing. Moreover, companies and large businesses take no initiative to reduce cost of the sustainable products, hence making these products almost inaccessible to those living in poverty. The fact that these people have to depend on cheap, unsustainable products is bad enough. Blaming them for the same is unacceptable. With all these arguments, I strongly believe that the motion is in our favor. Thank you.
Thank you, Vartika, for your fine speech. With that, I'll invite the first speaker of team opposition, Archie. If you're ready to go, we are happy to hear you in 3, 2, 1.
This house believes that environmentalists should not emphasize blaming large corporations for environmental degradation, as opposed to focus on individual responsibility. Let's start with the debate by understanding the role of the environmentalists. It's a person or entity who is concerned with protecting and preserving the natural environment. They do research, produce reports, write articles, and campaign for the public awareness. As well said by the opponent, that a large number of pollution is generated by corporates. But there are many bodies and laws that are supervising the pollution caused by large corporations and industries, like the Central Pollution Control Board in India and the EPA in USA, and many more. But the individuals do not do very less pollution. Do you know the average carbon footprint produced by one individual? The average carbon footprint of one individual is 16 tons in United States, and which is one of the highest rates in the world. To have the best chance of avoiding a 2 degrees Celsius rise in the global temperatures, the average carbon footprint per year needs to drop 2 tons by 2050. Lowering the carbon footprints from 16 tons to 2 tons doesn't happen overnight. And that's where the environment is playing, and it will play their role fairly. And there is no government body regulating or controlling pollution at the individual level. The environmentalists educate and make the people aware. Let's take a simple example of a famous environmentalist, Esteo Kese. The case's activism began in Gambia on witnessing the uncontrolled plastic pollutions. TC found a recycling movement called One Plastic Bag in Gambia to help women recycle plastic wastes into products that can be sold. Education, awareness, and controlling pollution at an individual rate has shown its impact. Today, the sources of pollution have shifted from production to consumption. In this slide, the acceptance of pro-environmental behavior by at education individual level is an urgent issue in protecting the environment. With this house strongly believes that environmentalists should not emphasize blaming large corporations for environmental degradation. Thank you.
Thank you, Archie, for your fine speech. With that, I'd like to call the second speaker of team proposition, which is Amber. Amber, if you're ready, we are happy to hear you in 3, 2, 1.
A very good afternoon, my esteemed adjudicator and my fellow opponents. My name is Amber Sethi, and I represent the government in front of this forum as the Deputy Prime Minister. As my dear opponent said, that if one carbon footprint is 31 tons, then imagine how much an entire industries will be. I only have one question, which is why should we blame individuals and not companies? Because at the end of the day, consumers are being drawn in by many industries which have non-sustainable methods to make a profit for themselves. So what industries should do is that they should find more sustainable practices to implement in their industries. Take the Coke industry, for example. They use plastic bottles and manufacture the products 1.7 billion times every day. Like this, there are many more industries, such as the fast fashion industry, the toothpaste factory, the chocolate factory. I could go on and on. What the companies are doing wrong is that the way they're manufacturing the products is in an unsustainable method. Since the Industrial Revolution in the 18th century, it is the companies that spend millions of dollars on advertising and generating demand for their products. For that, products or the impact of these products on the environment. It is in this sense that companies create demand and meet it with products that leave them with hefty profit margins. For example, if today I want to discard plastic bottles of shampoo, body wash, edible oils, liquid detergents, and many other such household items, there are hardly any being packaged in sustainable bottles other than plastic. So why the blame to buy plastic should come to individuals when there are not any bamboo or glass bottles being sold in the market? So when there is no supply of sustainable products, then even if there is reasonable demand from consumers, it will not solve the issue. Hence, we should blame companies and not individuals. Thank you.
Thank you, Amar, for your fine speech. With that, I would like to call the second speaker of team opposition, which is Parth. Parth, if you're ready, we are happy to hear you in 3, 2, 1.
Good evening, my jury member and my proposition speaker. I will start my speech now. Changing people's behavior at individual level is key to control pollution, but it should be done in a way that involves the community, say researcher, and that's where environmentalists are playing a vital role. They're educating people that how by making small changes to our action can bring a bigger impact. I take an example of Bill McKibben, a leading climate campaigner and founder of 350 ORG, argues that the most important thing people can do is come together to form movements or join existing groups that can push for change big enough to matter, from citywide renewable energy program to a large-scale divestment from fossil fuels. Also, individual choice and action are important. Experts say people need to unite if the scale of this challenge is to be met, making the political space for politicians and big businessmen to make the necessary change, and their way environmentalists are playing a great role. These small problems can be more bigger slowly than what we think now in future. So we have to take a step on this. As we know that we normal people are polluting the world slowly, and this slow work is getting more faster day by day. And it will get more bigger than what we think if this continues. In India, Swachh Bharat Abhiyan is one such drive driven at individual level only. And UNEP and NGOs are also working on it also. Global leaders are doing what they can to save the environment, and so should we. One such as on specific level. We have 12 years to limit change catastrophe, warns UN. I am redefining some points which my opponent speaker said, that my president speaker said that small number of people are polluting this whole earth. I don't think so. It is small number is if this number goes to a 7 billion and getting more bigger day by day. As my deputy president said that 31 are only producing carbon footprints are only producing the normal people. I don't think so that more company are doing more pollution by that. I think 31 ton are more bigger. And as my deputy president also said that the companies which are making the unsustainable products, I don't think so, because some of the companies are started to making sustainable products, and now they are doing it for not for only the top, not only for profit and also for the earth. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Parth, for your fine speech. With that, I'd like to invite the closing speaker for team proposition, Janvi. If you're ready, we are happy to hear you in 3, 2, 1.
A very good afternoon, esteemed adjudicator and my fellow opponents. My name is Janvi Sharma and I'm the whip of the government. Today, I will be summarizing my team's arguments in favor of the motion and remind you yet why the motion is in our favor. Before that, I would like to present some refutations to the arguments presented by the opposition team. The first one. See, education is a battle. This was said. But no, we have a doubt that they will follow it or not. You know, like teachers make us understand that don't burn crackers. But who don't burn crackers? Everyone burns crackers in life. So we have a doubt in our mind. So that's why I think blaming is a better way than education. Even the second speaker also said the same point, and I agree that educating people may be a good idea. But let me remind that the means to accomplish sustainable manufacturing processes are only available with the large corporation. As I have now proved to you, the opposition team's weak arguments turned out to be their Achilles heel. While we have presented you with an indisputable case, I would like to once again remind you, our esteemed judge, why we passionately, firmly believe that this motion is in our favor. Speaker 1 from our team spoke about why governments and businesses must be held accountable for reducing industrial pollution and who is actually causing this. And Speaker 2 elaborated more on her points. After the refutations and strong points by our team, I think that the motion is in our favor. Thank you and have a good one.
Thank you so much, Janvi, for that fine speech. With that, I'd like to call the last speaker of team opposition, Navya Khatri. If you're ready, then we are happy to hear you. In 3, 2, 1.
Good afternoon, all. My name is Navya, and today, against the motion, I am going to talk why the government should focus on individuals instead of big companies. Advice on how environmentalists help individuals to change their behavior. Educating them like benefits of taking public transport instead of the car, of a longer journey is the train rather than fly. Eat more vegetables and don't forget to turn off the light when leaving a room or the water when bathing. Switch to renewable energy whenever possible. Reduce, recycle, and reuse. Buy fewer things and consume less energy whenever possible. Recycle whenever possible. Demand a low carbon option in everything you consume, from clothes to food to energy. The implication here is that the impetus for addressing climate change is on individual consumers. But should it really be the responsibilities of individuals to limit global warming? On the face of it, we all contribute to global warming through the cumulative impact of our actions. By changing consumption patterns on a large scale, we might be able to influence companies to change their production patterns to more sustainable methods. Some experts have argued that everyone, or at least those who can afford it, has a responsibility to limit global warming, even if each individual action is insufficient in itself to make a difference. A far more just and effective approach would be to hold those who are responsible. Encouraging behavior change represents a win-win scenario that could reduce both overall concentrations of pollutions and the public's exposure. Environmentalists are using soft policies targeting behavior change to aware people, such as public communication, social marketing, and education campaigns. The decisions we make today at individual level are critical in ensuring a safe and sustainable method. Both now and in the future, the next few years are probably the most important in our history. Now I would like to do the rebuttals, like the educating people is working and Angavadi one such is doing. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Navya, for your fine speech. With the debates now closed, I will hand it over to the adjudicator to take some time to calculate the scores. Sanjana ma'am, all yours. I'm sure you'll take a minute or so.
Hi, yes, I'll just take a few minutes and be right back.
Okay. So all of you, thank you so much for your fine speeches. I must compliment you with the amount of effort that you have put in. And I do want to make sure that while ma'am will give you the overall feedback, these are new subjects that you are coming over. So it's all right, completely all right for you to write a speech and then write it in your own words. You know, because then you are able to understand what you're saying. And when you understand what you're saying, then you're able to sound more confident, right? But you're already onto a great journey. But I always tell the youngest always that use your own language. You are an 8, 9, 10-year-old. You don't have to sound like a 15-year-old, okay? Because once we are 15, then we'll never be 8 again, right? So use your own language. So write down the speeches. It's good to have a little bit of help with the research, but write the speech in your own words, right? The way you understand it. So we don't win debates by big words. We won big debates by big arguments and logically thought arguments. So I just wanted to make sure that all of you understand that. Have you all enjoyed researching for the debates and learning something new? Lovely. Good. Good. I'm so glad to hear. That's the whole idea of this experience. So do continue debating. I can see Anjana ma'am is back on the camera. You ready, ma'am? Over to you.
Yeah, thank you so much. I'll just take 10 seconds to get my sheet. And let's start. Right. So before I declare the result and before I begin formally with my oral adjudication, I would like to congratulate both the teams for doing a fantastic and commendable job at this debate and understanding the motion, framing arguments, and delivering speeches. It's amazing to see how 8 to 10-year-old kids deliver comprehensible speeches up to 3 minutes, which with such, the way you guys deliver also, the body language, the posture, the voice modulation, the framing of arguments, all of this is absolutely commendable, and I'm really happy to see all of that. Okay, so I know you guys are like really excited to know who won and who lost. So I'll just quickly move on to deliver the result, and after that I'll divide my oral adjudication into two parts, right? Firstly, I'll try to explain to you as to why whichever side won in terms of the arguments that you presented. And then I'll move on to quickly give you a speaker-wise feedback and what else you could have done better in order to improve your argumentation and speeches, right? So without further ado, for me, this was a very closely contested round, and on a very small margin, side government takes this debate and the motion stands. So now let's try and understand the nature of the motion and the kind of argumentation that both the sides brought up and why I credit side government more as compared to side opposition. Now, if you look at the motion carefully, there are three parts that you can divide it into, right? The first one being, and both the sides caught on to it pretty well, right? As to who is going ahead and demanding this change. It's the environmentalists, right? Because the motion states or reads that this house believes that environmentalists should blame individuals or corporations, right? So both the sides define who environmentalists are, but I think what you could have done more in this is that what is the aim or the goal of environmentalists? It's to preserve environment. So all of those things need to be included while you're framing argument, because it just makes it stronger in the sense that which argument or why does it relate more to the cause that environmentalists are standing up for or just like vouching for, right? And I link this again to the kind of arguments that both sides brought up, right? But let's understand what side government was able to prove by the end of this debate, right? So government had this argument that, hey, you should go ahead and blame corporations because they contribute to about what 70% of the environmental degradation, or they emit more amount of greenhouse gases, etc. Right? Now, what was opposition's counter response to this? Opposition says that no, individuals also, let's say, you stated the data about how carbon footprints are emitted by individuals as well, right? But on a comparative, if you see that if one individual is able to emit this much amount of carbon emission, I think that's the counter that government also came up with, then what would be the amount of emissions that these corporations would do? But beyond that, I think the second line of argumentation that government had, and that was pretty good, right? In terms of how change comes about. So the first part of the motion was who to blame and why, right? I think that's where government does a slightly better job because they're able to prove one, why corporations emit more amount of, let's say, or contribute more towards environmental damage. And secondly, when you talk about change, right, which means that which side is are you able to hold more accountable, and where is the environment getting better by holding which party accountable, right? Which means that when government tells me that look, when you go ahead and hold big corporations like Pepsi, Coca-Cola, who are going ahead and not only producing these goods but are also contributing towards creation of demand. I think that was the crux of your second speech when you went ahead and explained as to how by like coming up with creative advertisements and creating that sort of a demand, it's not ultimately the fault of the consumers for wanting to consume it. It's the problem of the producers as well. Also, the second reason why I credit government is because they also give me a reason See, when you're presenting arguments, the reasoning is also important because that just makes it more convincing for the listeners and to understand as to why that argument stands or just like is more stronger, right? And I think that's why government does a commendable job when they're telling and they explain that look, in the absence of sustainable goods within the market, what are the consumers going to opt into or what are the consumers going to buy if the only available option to them is produced by, and they also tell me why producers do it this way, right? Because they want profit. They're after profit, and that's why to minimize their profit, they use unsustainable methods. That's the reasoning that government tells me, and that's why I give them a few extra credit for that, right? So when you don't have sustainable goods available in the market, how are individuals going ahead and influencing change to create that sort of a better environment, right? That is the question that opposition now has to answer in terms of how are individuals going ahead and leading to creation of a better environment. Sure, even if I buy your argument that hey, every individual is contributing in some way or the other to environment and to pollute the environment, right? But on two grounds, government again works because government is able to prove that hey, corporations are doing slightly more in terms of environment, contributing slightly more in terms of environmental pollution as compared to individuals. But on a second level, it's easier for you to blame corporation and ask them to make sustainable goods which you can consume as opposed to like telling individuals. And I think a very simple example given the government with that hey, teachers teach you things, but are you sure that people or as individuals or as students you actually implement those changes? That's why government is also able to tell me that look, you're able to hold corporations accountable in terms of maybe that's not something that they mention, but you can do in terms of strengthening that argument, right? That maybe stronger laws, and there's this concept called CSR, corporate social responsibility, which asks corporations to use more environmentally sustainable methods to produce goods, right? So these are things that you can include to, let's say, strengthen your argument and just say that, hey, by making laws and all of those things, it's easier for you to ask the corporates to make sustainable goods and hence make the environment better, as opposed to asking individuals to adopt maybe more sustainable methods, right? So I think this is where government had to give me more reasons and more to make their arguments sound opposition, to make the arguments sound more convincing and why they're more important than whatever government is telling me, right? I think opposition had a case which was pretty much on point, which means that you targeted the right set of arguments. But I think in order to prove a point, you also have to give the listeners a reason to believe you, right? I think that's what largely was missing from said opposition. Stronger reasons as to why individuals should be held accountable, or stronger reasons why individuals are to blame because every individual corporate contributes in some way or the other to pollute the environment. Hence, why every individual should also be held accountable, right? So, stronger reasons and stronger ground, and this is what we call grounding, right? Which means that when you give stronger reasons for people to believe in your argument, is when that sounds more convincing, right? I think this is the broader difference between both the sides within this debate, and it was still a closely contested one. And I think in terms of like speaker feedback, I don't have much to tell you guys because all of you did a wonderful job in delivering your speeches, the manner, the posture, your voice modulation, all of it was fantastic. I had a truly great time adjudicating you. Good luck for future rounds. And if you have any questions, feel free to ask me.
Thank you so much, Anjana ma'am. So with that, I must tell you, it is like, I mean, the scores are so close. It is actually one of the highly contested matches, very closely contested. But team 2, you are the winners of the match. So congratulations on that. And I can tell you, team 4, you are very close, but we will have many more opportunities as well. So congratulations to team 2 and team 4 for this match. Yes, you were nearly there. Do you have any questions for ma'am over here right now? Any questions that you may have? Otherwise, then we will close this session. We do have the next match participants who have come in. So we would like to continue with that. Yes, Varlika, I can see you raising your hand. Go ahead.
Who's the best speaker?
So we will calculate that, Varlika. So allow us some time. We will formally declare the results as well. But for this match, like I said, we have team 2 who has won the debate. Yeah. All right. Thank you so much for the junior category, grades 4 to 6. If you want to sit and spectate, do rename yourself. Otherwise, we will move to the next category. And let me just stop recording for a bit.